Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Let's see. We'll begin with the defense today. What do you have for the court?
We have a few pre-trial matters to address. First, may I make introductions for the court? My name is Brian Price, and now along with my co-counsel, Mr. Morgan West, and Mr. Ali Massoud, represent the defendant in today's case, Ms. Danny Dawson.
Good afternoon.
First, Your Honor, we'd like to invoke Rule 615, the rule of constructive sequestration, meaning that all witnesses are to be presumed constructively sequestered throughout today's trial, except for a party representative. In today's case, ours will be Ms. Danny Dawson.
Okay. It is invoked. Anything else?
Also, pursuant to AMPA rules, all witnesses are presumed sworn prior to today's testimony. And also, may we assume all objections are heard outside the ears of the jury, or do we need to approach for a constructive sidebar?
No, we'll just assume that there is a sidebar going on.
Also, we'd ask your preference on movement about the well, approaching opposing counsel, the witness in the stand, and the bench.
Feel free to move about the well. Set up demonstratives. Don't ask permission. Just use them as your well. Ask permission to approach opposing counsel and the witnesses, though, so that we can have a quorum or an air of respect.
Yes, Your Honor. And with that, the defense jury proceeds.
All right. Anything from the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor, my name is Kimberly Jeter, and we represent the prosecution in today's case. As for Rule 615, we ask that our party representative be Officer Ryan Foster for today's case.
Is he the? Why does he qualify?
He's the officer that actually investigated this case and was the first officer on the scene, so he's also representing the prosecution in this case.
All right, he'll be allowed to stay in the courtroom.
Also, if you permit me to enter or to give to you a trial notebook which contains all possible exhibits for this case, relevant case law, the rules of evidence, the Midlands Penal Code, and with that, with permission to approach and tender that.
Yeah, come on. Is there any sort of order to all this? As far as like where stuff is, so that if I need to find it in the court, during the trial?
Also, Your Honor, we have the special instructions for today's case, the indictment for today's case, the stipulations for today's case, the orders in limine, and the jury instructions.
All right, obviously by the definition of stipulations, you guys have agreed to it. Are you familiar with the document she's about to hand me? Is everything on it correct?
Yes, Your Honor. I'm familiar with these documents, and we have no objections to them being admitted.
All right, well, they wouldn't be admitted, but yeah. All right.
Permission to.
Yeah. Right. Just wanted to make sure that you guys do stipulate everything on here.
Yes, Your Honor.
With that, Your Honor, the prosecution is ready to proceed.
All right. Let me ask you guys, why are y'all sitting in the order that you're sitting? Why is the prosecution over there and the defense over there? Does anybody know the rule as far as who sits on what side?
Prosecution was supposed to sit closer to the jury.
Right.
So that's-
And the jury in today's case is?
is-
No. I'm just,
Your Honor.
just make sure that you are aware of the rules, so that if you get a team and you want to make them move, you know you can quote the rule.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. All right. Prosecution opening statement.
Yes, Your
All right.
Honor. Permission to proceed.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury, she was never going to make it home in time. Because of Danny Dawson, she never made it home at all. On September 24th, 2010, three people got into Vanessa Sullivan's car, and only 2 made it out alive. And that is because the defendant decided to drink for 9.5 hours straight that day. Decided to get behind a wheel of a car with 2 people, drive down a dangerous stretch of road, intoxicated on a rainy night, only to beat a curfew. And because of that, Vanessa Sullivan is no longer here with us. My name is Kimberly Jeter, and I will present the prosecution in today's case, along with my co-counsel, Shanji Patel and Arnab Jodhpur. Now, how did we get here today? It's September 24th, 2010. It's Vanessa Sullivan's 21st birthday, and she wanted to celebrate it with her friends at Chuggy's Bar in Midlands. Now, of those friends, the defendant was supposed to drive home that night. But instead of being a responsible, sober, designated driver, Danny Dawson decided to have drink after drink after drink. And then she decided to get behind the wheel of a car. Not only did she decide to get behind the wheel of a car, she decided to make a 20-minute drive to Vanessa Sullivan's house in 10 minutes. The fact is, they were never going to make it home in time. And because of the defendant, Vanessa Sullivan never made it home at all. The defendant decided to drive and swerve and speed down an infamously dangerous stretch of road in pouring rain while under the influence of alcohol. Because of that, Vanessa Sullivan never made it home. Now, as the prosecution in today's case, we have the burden. We must prove to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, the defendant is guilty of murder and of driving under the influence. We must prove that she was reckless, that she knew she was being reckless, and that her reckless actions caused the death of Vanessa Sullivan, and also that she was driving under the influence. And we will do that by calling 3 witnesses before each day. First, we will call Taylor Hobson. Now, Taylor Hobson's the best friend of Vanessa Sullivan. She was also in the car accident that night. She's going to tell you of the events that happened at Chuggy's Bar. But she will also tell you that ride home. Next, we will call Officer Ryan Foster, who investigated this case, was actually the first officer on the scene. He will tell you of his investigation, of what he saw that night as he arrived at the scene, of the test he had Danny Dawson perform, and also of his fatal crash analysis they performed for this case. And lastly, we will call Dr. Avery Smith, who is the director of the Midlands Department of Forensic Sciences. Now, he will come before you and tell you of his observations of the defendant on September 25th, 2010, and also the test performed on the defendant that night. Members of the jury, the defendant made the decision to race against time, to speed, to swerve, to drive under the influence. And because of that, Vanessa Sullivan never made it home. And that's why, at the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Shawnee Patel, will come before you and ask that you find the defendant guilty.
Does the defense have an opening statement, or are going to wait until after the prosecution's case in chief?
Yes, Your Honor, we have no opening statement.
Proceed when you're ready.
Assumptions. The prosecution has stood before you today and made their argument based on assumptions. They assumed Danny Dawson was drunk on the night of the accident. They assumed that Danny Dawson knew of the dangers of the road she was driving on. And they assumed that Danny Dawson would intentionally disregard the safety of her friends. However, these statements are nothing more than a series of unfounded accusations, a series of assumptions. And until they are proven with evidence, they remain just that. Baseless, worthless assumptions. My name is Ali Massoud, and I'm here today along with my co-counsel, Brian Price and Morgan West, representing the defendant in the state of Midlands versus Danny Dawson. In the prosecution's rush to find a scapegoat for the tragic events of September 24th, they have blamed Danny Dawson. They have made her a scapegoat. They would have you believe that Danny Dawson is some sort of monster. But that's not Danny Dawson. Members of the jury, this is Danny Dawson. She is a student at Calkins College who dreams of becoming a lawyer one day. And as vice president of her school's SGA, and with a 4.0 GPA, she was well on her way. That is, until the tragic events of September 24th, 2010. On that night, Miss Dawson and her friends, Vanessa Sullivan and Taylor Hobson, were out celebrating at Chucky's Sports Bar. On their way home, it was dark, and it was raining, and they took a road that turned out to be filled with danger. A road that should have had guardrails. A road that should have been better lit. So when an object appeared suddenly in Miss Dawson's path, she swerved to avoid it. And the ensuing accident is the reason we are all here today. Now, as the defense in today's case, we have no burden of proof. However, we will show that the prosecution's accusations are nothing more than assumptions. In order to do this, we will be asking two questions. First, was Danny Dawson drunk on the night of the accident? And second, what caused the crash? Now, in order that we may answer these two questions, we will be calling the three witnesses. First, you will hear from Jordan James. Miss James is a bartender at Chucky's and a close friend of Danny Dawson's. She will tell you that in all the times Danny has been at her bar, she has never seen her drive drunk. Next, you will hear from Ashley Norton, a medical expert. Miss Norton will tell you about why the breathalyzer test used on Miss Dawson that night did not follow the proper procedures, and why the results of that test were inaccurate. Finally, you will hear from an accident reconstruction specialist, Leslie Roman. Mr. Roman will tell you that the tracks on the road that night are consistent with an object appearing in Miss Dawson's way. Additionally, he will tell you about the dangers of the road and why it should have been fixed. Now, at the end of today's trial, we are confident that you will see Danny Dawson is innocent. We ask that you do not make assumptions. We ask that you look at the evidence before you and see that Danny Dawson is innocent. That is why at the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Brian Price, will come before you and ask that you find the defendant not guilty. Thank you.
Your Honor.
Yes?
I'm sorry, it's just come to my attention that no one is keeping time. Can we appoint a timekeeper?
I have timekeepers for the teams.
I think we do.
I do. just doing it right now,
Who doesn't have a role?
today.
Come on, keep going. One of you guys.
Neil, you know how. Yeah, just- I think it's done right here. All right.
Are we doing comments between?
I did them at the end of each case in chief last week, but any way you'd like to do them is fine.
Yeah, let's do them while they're fresh.
Okay.
And then that way it also keeps it shorter, I hope.
Okay.
Yeah, just,
You have anything?
I got some pre-trial open in both openings, so you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Pre-trial, we still need to work on things like we'd like, quote unquote, we'd like to do that, or we'd like to do that. Just go ahead and ask the judge, Your Honor, permission for me to do this. Still needs to be a little more confident on the pre-trial. Pre-trial, it doesn't matter so much what you do, it matters how you do it. This is your opportunity to get up front of the judge and kind of take control of the courtroom and kind of show kind of what you know. I was filming the camera, so I don't have a whole lot more comments than that, but on pre-trial, do you have anything, Coach?
Brian,
yes.
if you get the opportunity to go first,